Hi guys, my name is Pegah Rahgozar. I'm an immigration attorney here in Houston, Texas, and the reason for today's video is to discuss human trafficking. And boy, Houston, do we have a problem. Did you know that Houston is actually a hub for human trafficking? I've actually written an article today published on my website that talks a little bit about human trafficking. And today's video will be one of a series of videos where we'll discuss human trafficking more in depth. That way you can help spot someone who is or may be a victim of human trafficking. And have you ever driven down your street every day past shopping centers and spotted workout studios, nail salons, massage parlors, restaurants, and cantinas, and ever wondered what really goes on behind closed doors? Well, some of those places are actually fronts for human trafficking. Criminal rings behind the scenes are not just dealing in guns or drugs, but they're actually dealing in selling humans. They're selling men, women, and children of all ages and backgrounds and of all immigration statuses, including U.S. citizens and residents. Not to mention the more vulnerable population, who are the undocumented immigrants or the ones that are non-English speaking. Now, many people think that human trafficking is a crime that only occurs in third world countries. Well, the truth of the matter is that it's actually happening here in the United States, and especially here in our beloved Houston, where we are actually a big hub for human trafficking. Human trafficking is actually also known as modern-day slavery because it occurs using individual men, women, and children, forcing them to work against their will, whether that be in the commercial sex acts or forced labor through the use of fraud, force, or coercion. These individuals basically get through ploys by criminal organizations or gang members. Through ploys and tactics, they are solicited for labor or services against their will, and they get entrapped into these situations where they're not able to escape that predator or that organization. Many times you see children, particularly girls ages 12 to 14, become victims of sex trafficking in particular. But of course adults are no safer as well, no safer than children. Many women and men are also lured by traffickers with promises of a better life and greater jobs and better jobs, and sold to other handlers. According to some statistics in 2017 by a study done by the University of Texas, some 313,000 people in Texas actually became victim of human trafficking, and out of those, 79,000 were minors and youth as sex workers. As I mentioned, Houston has become a hub for human trafficking, and part of this could be due to the proximity to the Mexican border. But of course, there's also the proximity to the I-10 corridor which is the country's most trafficking path between El Paso and Houston. A lot of times these individuals may have consented to being smuggled into the United States with hopes of better lives. Of course, there's a distinction between being smuggled and being trafficked. And although the smuggling occurs from the individual being transported into the United States, the trafficking itself occurs inside the United States. And a lot of times that trafficking or that smuggling turns into trafficking once there's fraud, force, or coercion or exploitation of the individual into forced labor or commercial sex acts against their will. Of course, not all individuals that are smuggled into the United States fall victim to human trafficking, but we see a lot of the cases that end up being that once they cross over into the United States, now they've become a victim of their captors, of their handlers, into forced labor and forced commercial sex acts. And these forced labor can occur, in restaurants or cantinas. It could occur in nail salons, massage parlors, workout studios, things like that. But it also can be domestic servants, domestic work, basically. Someone who becomes your servant or your slave inside your home. A lot of times too, we see individuals who actually come here from abroad, places like India, the Philippines, or Russia, with a possible job prospect. They are coming to the United States with actual U.S. visas, promised work here, and then once they actually legally enter the United States, their terms of employment changes. So human trafficking does not have a specific victim that you could say, okay, this individual is probably someone who's fallen victim to human trafficking. It knows, basically anyone can fall prey to it. And a lot of times traffickers are using social media nowadays to lure in their victims. And of course, at the same time, they advertise their services that way to even individuals that may live in your neighborhood, your local pedophiles, so as to speak. I mean, we hear cases of pastors or school teachers who solicit and engage in these sort of illicit services where women or children are actually trafficked into these commercial sex acts that these individuals are seeking those services of. These traffickers also use various tactics and ploys to lure in their victims, and they make false promises, again through fraud, force, or coercion and manipulation to get these children, women, and men with promises of a better life. They actually get them hooked into a life of abuse, addiction, poverty, illnesses, and various physical and mental illnesses and instabilities. Of course, like I mentioned, no one really is immune to becoming a victim of trafficking. And so some ways to kind of keep alert of whether you spot someone who is a victim or who may have been a victim of human trafficking. These are ways to keep alert. And some of the venues and industries for labor or sex trafficking, as mentioned, are domestic work, illicit activities, traveling sales crews, any retail or small businesses, construction, restaurants and cantinas, nail salons, massage parlors and spas, hotels and motels, and also residence-based commercial sex escort services or online ads. Some of course red flags to look when you are kind of figuring out whether someone might be a victim or who has been a victim. Some red flags to look for at certain establishments are, does the establishment have the required licensing? For instance, do they operate within normal business hours? Do they have irregular staff or their regular staff there? Because usually human traffickers will rotate out these individuals every few weeks, so you'll see an irregular staff that's at that establishment. Do they have regular time off from work, or are they working round the clock 24/7? Are they allowed to converse with the customers, or basically is the management speaking on their behalf? Do they seem nervous, anxious, or fearful, and also show poor signs of poor physical or mental health? And oftentimes too, these industries or these establishments will offer below the market value for those services, whether it's getting your nails done or getting a massage or a foot massage or things like that. Some things to also keep in mind are, this is under the Department of Homeland Security's Blue Campaign that also lists factors of human trafficking, is whether this individual is in fact in possession of identification or trafficking documents, or does someone else have control of their actual documents? Was this individual recruited for one purpose but then forced into engaging in another job? Is the victim's salary being garnished to pay off quote-unquote smuggling fee? Was the victim forced to perform sexual acts, or do they have freedom of movement? These are another series of questions to maybe be on the lookout for, or flags to look out for when trying to identify victims of human trafficking. If you do suspect someone is or may have been a victim of human trafficking, You can always call our office. We handle trafficking visa cases, T visas for individuals who are in need of a status, who have been affected and are victims of human trafficking. They are more than welcome to call our office at 832-792-3636 for a consultation to discuss whether their situation is in fact meets the eligibility requirements for obtaining a trafficking visa. Also, we have on our website published lists of some organizations that can also help victims of human trafficking. The City of Houston themselves have a website specifically for human trafficking to help in assisting those individuals and guiding them through the process. Of course, they don't necessarily handle the immigration side of things, but they do offer victim services. There's also the National Human Trafficking Hotline that's also listed on our website. That could also be a place to start for victims to start feeling that maybe they can talk about what has occurred to them. Thank you so much for listening to this video. If you have any questions, as I mentioned, our office number is 832-792-3636. You can also email me at pr.law@rahgozarlaw.com with any questions. We are looking to help these individuals basically either reach a positive resolution in their immigration status, but also help them obtain physical and mental well-being because of being victimized in these situations. We look forward to speaking with individuals and helping anyone we can. Like I mentioned, please feel free to reach out to our office and